Hello guys, in this video we will explore the biography of one of the biggest saviors and teachers in Islamic religion. So before we start, please to subscribe in my channel to receive more amazing videos. Shaykh al-Islam Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, the scientist and the great debater. One of the most famous scholars to have lived since the revival of Islam by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago, was Imam Ibn Taymiyyah. No student of Islam can be ignorant about him. Like all famous people, Imam Ibn Taymiyyah had a controversial standing in the society of his time. Some people supported him, but those who opposed him were infinitely larger in number. Following is a brief biography of his life and the legacy of his work. Ibn Taymiyyah's childhood. Imam Ibn Taymiyyah's complete name is Taqiyuddin Abul Abbas Ahmad ibn al-Halim ibn Abd as-Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Hanbali. The word Ibn is an Arabic word, means son of. He was born in 22nd of January, 1263 in Haran, which is now a part of eastern Turkey. His family fled to Damascus when he was 7 years old. Ibn Taymiyyah came from a family of learned men. Abu al-Barakat Majd-ad-Din Ibn Taymiyyah al-Hanbali, his grandfather and his Fakhr al-Din, his uncle, were both scholars of the Hanbali school of law. His father, Shihab al-Din Abd al-Halim ibn Taymiyyah, served as the director at the Sukhariya Madrasa. The word madrasa in Arabic means school, and was later a chair of the Great Mosque of Damascus. Ibn Taymiyyah's three brothers were also known for their knowledge and excellence. Ibn Taymiyyah's education. Ibn Taymiyyah received all his early education and schooling in the Sukhariya Madrasa, Damascus. He became a Hafi of the Quran in his early teens. He learned fiqh and usulul fiqh from his father. He studied the works of Imam Hanbal, Al-Kalal, Ibn Qudamah and his grandfather. He studied under more than 200 scholars. He memorized the hadith with strict adherence to narration and athar. He had all the greatest books of knowledge at that time recited to him numerous times, such as the Musnad of Ahmad, the Sahihs of Al-Bukhari and Muslim, the Jami of At-Tirmidhi, the Sunan of Abu Dawud, and Nasai, Ibn Majah and Al-Daraqutni. Ibn Taymiyyah studied the Arabic language and grammar under at Tufts and mastered the Book of Arabic Grammar by Sibawayh. Sibawayh is an Arabic language professor. There was rarely a book in the sciences of Islam except that he would come across it, and Allah had blessed him with an ability to quickly memorize and rarely forget. He would hardly come across or hear something except that it would remain in his memory, either in wording or meaning. It was as if knowledge had become infused in his flesh, blood, and entire body. Ibn Taymiyyah even studied math, algebra, calligraphy, theology, philosophy, and history. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with such a bright mind that his whole education was complete at 20 years of age. Ibn Taymiyyah's works. Ibn Taymiyyah's knowledge and memory were astounding. He could narrate and quote innumerable verses, hadith, sunnah, and incidences verbally. His works amount to 350 according to the Savior Ibn Qayyim and 500 according to the scholar Ad-Dhahabi. All of his works have not survived, and his work of 35 volumes is incomplete. Ibn Taymiyyah wrote his first book at age 29, after completing Hajj, called Manasik al-Hajj, Rites of the Pilgrimage. It contained criticism about all the innovations he noticed during his pilgrimage. He wrote his second book in prison. He had been imprisoned for protesting against Asaf al-Nazrani, a Christian cleric, who had insulted the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There, he wrote his second book. As-Sarim al-Maslul al-Shaitam ar-Rasul, the drawn sword against those who insult the messenger. Ibn Taymiyyah wrote his next books in 1298. One book was about the Ayat al-Mutashabihat. Another was Al-Aqidah al-Hamawiyah, the Creed to the people of Hama, Syria. This was in response to a question posed to him by the people of Hama. He wrote a similar book on request from a judge from Wasit, Iraq, called Al-Aqidah al-Wasitiyah, the Creed to the people of Wasit. During his stay in Cairo, Egypt, he was a consultant to the Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad regarding religious and political affairs. That's when he wrote his next book Al-Siyasu al-Sharia, the book of governance according to Sharia. In 1316, Ibn Taymiyyah wrote his famous work, Minhaj as-Sunnah an-Nabawiyyah, The Way of the Prophet's Sunnah, 4 volumes. This was in retaliation for increasing Shi'ism in Persia and al-Hilli's book, Minhaj al-Karama, The Way of Charisma. 10 years later, he was declared a kafir and imprisoned for issuing a fatwa claiming that anyone who made a special pilgrimage to the Prophet's mosque has innovated in Islam. It was his longest prison sentence. His student, Ibn al-Qayyim, was imprisoned with him. During his imprisonment, he wrote 3 extant works. Arad al-Alikni, Kitab Ma'rif al-Wusul, Raf al-Malam. Some of his other works include Majmu' al-Fatwa al-Kubra, a great compilation of fatwa, 36 volumes. This was collected centuries after his death. Darta'u al-Aql wal-Naql, Averting the Conflict Between Reason and Tradition, 10 volumes. Al-Asma was Sifar, Allah's Names and Attributes, 2 volumes. Tafsir of Surah Ikhlas. Commentary on the verse The Beneficent Ascended the Throne. Kitab al-Iman, Book of Faith. Naqd Tasis, Criticism of Incorporation. Iqtida as-Sirat al-Mustaqim, Following the Straight Path. Share Future al-Ghaib, Commentary on Revelations of the Unseen by Abdul Qadir Gilani. Al-Furqan Ba'in Awliya ar-Rahman wa Awliya ash-Shaitan, The Friends of Allah and the Friends of Shaitan. The number of his books is too huge to mention all of them. Contribution and Legacy. Ibn Taymiyyah left a considerable body of work, often republished in Syria, Egypt, Arabia, and India, that extended and justified his religious and political involvements and was characterized by its rich documentation, sober style, and brilliant polemic. In addition to innumerable fatwas, legal opinions based on religious law, and several professions of faith, the most beautiful of which is the Wasiyah, 2 works merit particular attention. One is his Al-Siyasat al-Shari'iyah, treatise on juridical politics, available in French and English translations. The other, Minhaj al-Sunnah, The Way of Tradition, is the richest work of comparative theology surviving from medieval Islam. Ibn Taymiyyah desired a return to the sources of the Muslim religion, which he felt had been altered too often, to one extent or another, by the different religious sects or schools. The sources were the Quran and the Sunnah, revealed writing and the prophetic tradition. The Aimma, or community consensus, had no value in itself, he insisted, unless it rested on those 2 sources. His traditionalism, however, did not prevent Ibn Taymiyyah from allowing analogical reasoning, qiyas, and the argument of utility, maslahah, a large place in his thought. On the condition that both rested on the objective givens of revelation and tradition. Only such a return to sources, he felt, would permit the divided and disunited Muslim community to re-find its unity. In theodicy, the justification of God as good when evil is observable in the world, Ibn Taymiyyah wished to describe God as he is described in the Quran and as the Prophet did in the Sunnah, which led him to side with theological schools in disagreement with contemporary opinion. This position was the point of departure for a critique, often conducted with very subtle argument, of the ideas of such dogmatic theologians as Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari or Fakhr al-Din al-Razi. Such philosophers as Avicenna and Averroes, or such mystics as Ibn al-Arabi. Concerning practices, Ibn Taymiyyah believed that one could only require, in worship, those practices inaugurated by God and his Prophet, and that one could only forbid, in social relations, those things forbidden by the Quran and the Sunnah. Thus, on the one hand, he favored a revision of the system of religious obligations and a brushing aside of condemnable innovations, bid'ah, and, on the other, he constructed an economic ethic that was more flexible on many points than that espoused by the contemporary schools. In politics, Ibn Taymiyyah recognized the legitimacy of the first 4 caliphs, the Rashidun, but he rejected the necessity of having a single caliphate and allowed for the existence of many emirates. Within each emirate he demanded that the prince apply the religious law strictly and rely on it for his legal opinion. And Ibn Taymiyyah demanded from those under the prince's jurisdiction that they obey the established authority except where it required disobedience to God. Every Muslim being required to will the good and forbid the bad for the benefit of the common welfare. Though Ibn Taymiyyah had numerous religious and political adversaries in his own time, he has strongly influenced modern Islam for the last 2 centuries. He is the source of the Wahhabiyyah, a strictly traditionist movement founded by Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, died 1792, who took his ideas from Ibn Taymiyyah's writings. Ibn Taymiyyah also influenced various reform movements that have posed the problem of reformulating traditional ideologies by a return to sources. Role of Ibn Taymiyyah in Mongol invasion. First invasions. The first invasion took place between December 1299 and April 1300 due to the military campaign by the Mamelukes against the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia, who were allied with the Mongols. The Ilkhanate army managed to reach Damascus by the end of December 1299. Ibn Taymiyyah went with a delegation of Islamic scholars to talk to Ghazan Khan, who was the Khan of the Mongol Ilkhanate of Iran, to plead clemency and to stop his attack on the Muslims. It is reported that none of the scholars said anything to the Khan except Ibn Taymiyyah, who said, "You claim that you are Muslim and you have with you mueddins, muftis, imams and sheikhs, but you invaded us and reached our country for what? While your father and your grandfather, Hulagu, were non-believers, they did not attack and they kept their promise. But you promised and broke your promise." By early January 1300, the Mongol allies, the Armenians and Georgians, had caused widespread damage to Damascus and they had taken Syrian prisoners. The Mongols effectively occupied Damascus for the first 4 months of 1303. Most of the military had fled the city, including most of the civilians. Ibn Taymiyyah, however, stayed and was one of the leaders of the resistance inside Damascus, and he went to speak directly to the Khan, Mahmud Ghazan, and his vizier Rashid al-Din Tabib. He sought the release of Muslim and Dhimmi prisoners which the Mongols had taken in Syria, and after negotiation, secured their release. Second Mongol invasion. The second invasion lasted between October 1300 and January 1301. Ibn Taymiyyah at this time began giving sermons on jihad at the Umayyad Mosque. Ibn Taymiyyah also spoke to and encouraged the governor of Damascus, Al-Afram, to achieve victory over the Mongols. He became involved with Al-Afram once more, when he was sent to get reinforcements from Cairo. Third invasion and fatwa. The year 1303 saw the third Mongol invasion of Syria by Ghazan Khan. What has been called Ibn Taymiyyah's most famous fatwa was issued against the Mongols in the Mamluks' War. Ibn Taymiyyah declared that jihad against the Mongol attack on the Mamluk Sultanate was not only permissible, but obligatory. The reason being that the Mongols could not, in his opinion, be true Muslims despite the fact that they had converted to Sunni Islam because they ruled using what he considered man-made laws, their traditional Yasa code. A kind of constitution, rather than Islamic law or Sharia, whilst believing that the Yasa code was better than the Sharia law. Because of this, he reasoned they were living in a state of jahiliyyah, or pre-Islamic pagan ignorance. The fatwa broke new Islamic legal ground because no jurist had ever before issued a general authorization for the use of lethal force against Muslims in battle, and was to influence modern Islamists in the use of violence against self-proclaimed Muslims. Ibn Taymiyyah called on the Muslims to jihad once again and personally participated Battle of Marj al-Safar against the Ilkhanid army. The battle began on the 20th of April of that year. On the same day, Ibn Taymiyyah declared a fatwa which exempted Mamluk soldiers from Ibn Taymiyyah's life and death. Ibn Taymiyyah lived a very simple and decent life. He was devoted to Allah in his worship and didn't let anything distract him from it. He made dhikr from Fajr until the sun rose, every day. He used to attend every Muslim funeral. His classes were open to one and all with no discrimination. He reacted swiftly to eradicate evil wherever he noticed it. He pioneered so stringently for true Islam and eradication of innovations that he was imprisoned many times by leaders of his time. They didn't want to change their ways and felt threatened by him. He did not own any material wealth. His only wealth and legacy for further generations was knowledge. Even with his controversial fame, knowledge and faithful students, he was the most humble man to come across. He gave everyone he came across equal respect. He never married or had a family. He had the best of manners and never dressed extravagantly. He was one of the bravest men to live at that time. No one was more forthcoming than him to participate in jihad. He was steadfast in deen and held firm to the truth of Islam until his last breath. Upon his death, in prison, the whole city of Damascus had shut down, and the crowd of people who came to attend his funeral exceeded 500,000 in number. He was honored with one of the largest funeral prayers in history. Ibn Taymiyyah is one of those that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was referring to when he said, "Indeed, Allah sends at the beginning of every century he who will revive for this ummah the affair of its religion." His knowledge, personality, and jihad are an inspiration and an example of righteousness for us. If you like this video, push like, please to subscribe for more videos. Goodbye.